Alright, hi everyone. Welcome to this recorded lecture on animal reproduction and development. This is last week of class, so you want to make sure that you are completing the Mastering Biology assignments. This week's discussion question will deal with kind of your overall reflection of your learning, so hope that's college level enough for you. But you want to make sure that you do that and respond to a classmate to kind of wrap things up here for the semester. So here's the opening roadmap for this chapter, chapter 47. So we're going to look at two ways in which organisms reproduce, asexually and sexually. We're going to look at the different structures for animals that reproduce these ways. We're going to focus mostly on mammals here and sexual reproduction, but we will mention asexual reproduction as well. We'll look a little at sex hormones, pregnancy, birth, and development. So in terms of evolution and physiological systems, right? Everything is designed in order for animals to survive long enough to reproduce. Okay, so everything is setting up for a reproductive advantage. So producing offspring is really the main reason why we see adaptations existing in animals. So all of the adaptations that allow an organism to survive allow them to survive long enough so that they can reproduce and pass their genes on to their offspring. There's many diverse mechanisms we're going to see by which animals reproduce. And understanding how this process works is really important when we're looking at various aspects of biology. There's developmental biology, there's medicine, right? And reproduction is going to play a key role in many fields in biology. So there's two major groupings we see for how animals reproduce. Okay, so they can reproduce sexually, really not animals, but all organisms. They can reproduce sexually, and they can reproduce asexually. So asexual reproduction, the first type, is more simple. Asexual reproduction is, one organism is now going to split in some way and it's going to clone itself, and we're going to have two organisms. So an example of asexual reproduction is mitosis. So all of your body cells reproduce by mitosis. They just divide, and when the cells divide, they make exact copies or clones. Okay, so that's mitosis. So this happens very quickly. It doesn't require a mate. It doesn't require gametes, which are egg and sperm cells. Okay? Sexual reproduction, on the other hand, is based on meiosis. So different than mitosis, meiosis takes a cell and reduces the chromosome number in half. And when we do that, we end up with gametes. And then gametes can combine to produce offspring. And those offspring are going to be genetically different from each other and also genetically different from the parents. So there's definitely trade-offs to each of these. So with asexual reproduction, you don't get any diversity, right? So if something comes around and, let's say there's a disease that affects the genome, everybody is going to get that because they're not protected. Whereas with sexual reproduction, we have different genes, and different genes confer different advantages, and we see things happening. We see evolution taking place where there's sexual reproduction, right? With only a few exceptions, we don't see evolution take place with asexual reproduction unless it's the result of random mutations. So we do see it, but not as frequently as you would see it with sexual reproduction because there's not nearly as much diversity. Okay, the advantage to asexual reproduction being you don't need to expend energy to find a mate. It's faster, but sexual reproduction provides that critical genetic diversity. So asexual reproduction occurs in three different ways. We're just going to focus on two on this slide, and then the third one will come up in a picture. But first one is budding. And again, asexual reproduction, remember, is just one parent producing an offspring. So in budding, an offspring forms within or on the parent. It basically just buds off the side of it, like you'd imagine a bud coming off of a plant. And a miniature version of the parent, a little bud, starts to grow, and then eventually will break free from the parent and grow on its own. In fission, okay, so bacteria and some anemones reproduce by fission, individual is going to split, okay, just split down the middle into two or more descendants. Okay, so here's budding in a hydra. You can see there's the parent hydra and then the bud coming off of it. It's a small version, and eventually this will break off. The splitting of the anemone here, the site of fission. Bacteria reproduce this way as well. And interesting, parthenogenesis in lizards, all the lizards are female, and unfertilized eggs develop into females. So it is asexual reproduction. There's one parent. They're all genetically the same, and they're all considered females, these eggs, or these, the eggs and the lizards in parthenogenesis. So again, the advantage there being you don't have to find a mate. The disadvantage being there's no genetic diversity, so they're very susceptible to problems that could occur in the environment that maybe could wipe out the whole species, since there's no organisms that have differences that could make them immune to that. So we'll spend some more time with sexual reproduction now. So how does sexual reproduction work? So it has to start with the production of gametes, which are egg and sperm cells. So the mitotic cell divisions, meiotic cell divisions, and developmental events that result in the production of gametes is called gametogenesis. And there's two types of gametogenesis. There's spermatogenesis, which is going to occur in males, and oogenesis, which is going to occur in females, and that's going to produce ova. So spermatogenesis in males produce the male gamete, sperm, and oogenesis in females produce the female gamete, the ova, or the egg. In the vast majority of animals, this process occurs in a sex organ called a gonad. Okay, in males, the gonads that produce sperm are the testis, and in females, the ovaries produce the eggs. Okay, so the eggs are produced in the ovaries. So the process of spermatogenesis is a little more straightforward than oogenesis. So basically, in spermatogenesis, in the testis, there's an original cell. It's a diploid cell, meaning it has the full number of chromosomes. Is called a spermatogonia, and there's a bunch of them, and they continuously divide by mitosis to get more spermatogonia in there, okay? Some of those spermatogonia are then going to be selected to go on to become the cells that will be sperm, okay? Those are called primary spermatocytes. Okay, these don't undergo mitosis to make more spermatogonia. They rather undergo meiosis to produce spermatocytes. So these primary spermatocytes undergo meiosis 1 to produce 2 secondary spermatocytes. Those secondary spermatocytes then go through another round of division called meiosis 2. So meiosis is broken up into two parts, meiosis 1, okay, which makes them haploid, and then meiosis 2, which separates homologous chromosomes. Okay, so this is kind of bio 1, the meiosis, so I'm not going to get into that too much. We're just going to apply it now to what's happening with spermatogenesis and oogenesis. Okay, so spermatogenesis, meiosis is a process that is embedded in spermatogenesis. So sometimes we think, oh, the process by which egg and sperm are made is meiosis. That's not entirely true. Meiosis is the process by which chromosome number is reduced. Specifically, spermatogenesis, and oogenesis is how sperm and egg are produced, respectively. So at the end of the process of spermatogenesis, we have 4 haploid cells, and those are called spermatids. And those will go on to undergo a bunch of morphological changes to become sperm. So what makes a sperm so special? It's carrying haploid genes. So it's carrying half the genes of a normal cell from the male, and the sperm is going to swim through the female reproductive tract. This process of spermatogenesis continues throughout an adult male's life. So starting at puberty and then all the way till death, males can produce sperm and have children. When we look at oogenesis, we'll see that it's different in females, right? They do not continuously produce eggs. There is an endpoint to that in menopause. Okay, so on the left, we've got spermatogenesis, and you can see that original diploid cell, that spermatogonium, is going to, in the gonad, in the testis, some of them are going to make more copies of themselves because this process is happening a bunch of times. But some are going to undergo the process of meiosis here. So this primary spermatocyte is going to duplicate its chromosomes, make homologous pairs, and they're going to go through meiosis 1, meiosis 2, and then ultimately we'll have 4 mature sperm from that process. Oogenesis, on the right, you'll see a little bit different. It starts off the same. We've got this original stem cell, this oogonium. Some are going to undergo mitosis, but some are going to go through the process of meiosis here. Primary oocyte, this is the same, it's diploid. Differences here start at meiosis 1. So here we see this little polar body being produced instead of a second cell. Okay, that's because the cytoplasm from this polar body is getting donated to the secondary oocyte. Okay, same thing happens here in meiosis 2. 3 of them donate their cytoplasm to one ootid. So what you can see happening in oogenesis is quality over quantity. So rather than producing 4 eggs that are smaller, we produce 1 egg that's really big. And that allows for more healthy eggs to be produced with lots of resources built in them, lots of nutrients built in them, I should say. And that ootid will go on to become a mature egg that will be fertilized, potentially by one of the mature sperm that are produced from a male. So sperm is specialized for one function and one function only, and that's to swim to an egg. So it's got a flagellum or a tail, it's got a head, and inside the head it's got the nucleus, the haploid nucleus with half the number of chromosomes. Surrounding the head there's also an enzyme called the acrosome, which allows the sperm to penetrate the egg. The neck contains a centriole that'll combine with the centriole contributed by the egg to form something called a centrosome. And when the cell begins to divide following fertilization, it'll be used to move the chromosomes around. In the midpiece of the sperm, there's lots and lots of mitochondria, and there's a cool picture coming in a second. Mitochondria contain ATP, which power the movement of the sperm. So to move a flagellum requires a lot of energy, a lot of ATP. Okay, the tail with a flagellum contains microtubules and whips back and forth to make swimming possible. So the sperm cell is the only human cell to contain a flagellum. Sperm are streamlined cells specialized for racing other sperm to the egg. Like I said, that's their only function. Eggs are large comparatively to the sperm. They don't move as much. They only move down the fallopian tubes, and they're packed with, like I said, those valuable nutrients for supporting the developing embryo. So here's a cool picture of the sperm. You can see the nucleus in there. Okay, this dark area. Okay, when you get down here into the where the flagellum is, notice that there's all these mitochondria surrounding the outside of the mitochondria. Okay, not all sperm have a vacuole. Some do, a contractile vacuole or a large storage area in there. Some do not. There's the centrioles, which will be involved in cell division when this thing comes together with the egg. Okay. So we talked a little about oogenesis already, but just to kind of more formally here. So in the female gonad, the original diploid cell is called an oogonia, and it undergoes mitosis to form these primary oocytes. Okay, some of these will undergo meiosis, but only one of the four is actually going to mature into an egg. Okay, so what's interesting here is this process up to that point freezes in embryonic development. So in females, you're born with all of the eggs you'll ever have. Okay, but they're stuck at the secondary stage. Okay, once it is fertilized, okay, one of those eggs is released starting at puberty every month, and if sperm are present, it will undergo meiosis too. If not, it will be it'll leave through menstruation. Okay. If it is fertilized, it completes meiosis to become an ootid, which matures into an ovum. So other than that one cell that's produced, the rest are called polar bodies. Okay, so they only have a tiny amount of cytoplasm. They don't mature into eggs. Okay, and they degenerate shortly after their formation, so they get broken down. The production of primary oocytes stops in early development in many animals. In humans, it stops before a female fetus is born, like I said. So these eggs are kind of arrested there in that in their development. The primary oocytes enter prophase of meiosis 1 during fetal development, but then stop dividing for months, years, or decades, depending on the species. So like I said, in humans, this occurs in puberty, but in other animals, it can be vastly different. Okay. The egg not only carries genetic information from the female, but also contains nutrients needed by the embryo during early growth. So that's why it's really important that we see that sort of ability for the egg to emphasize quality over quantity. Okay. So in most mammals, the mature egg is a membrane-bound structure consisting of the haploid nucleus, full component of other organelles, so it's got mitochondria and those sorts of things, large supply of nutrients provided by yolk, fat and protein-rich cytoplasm. So the egg is basically a fortress of good stuff for the developing embryo. So the male reproductive system, so in humans, the external anatomy of the male consists of a sac-like scrotum, which holds the testis inside the gonads, and the penis, which functions as the organ of copulation needed for internal fertilization. Okay, so here's a look at the anatomy of the male. You've got urinary bladder, which is not part of the reproductive system. But here we've got the testis right here, and surrounding them is the scrotum, and sperm are produced within the testis here, specifically the epididymis, and the sperm will travel through the vas deferens, okay, and the vas deferens gets more convoluted here, ultimately before it gets the ejaculatory duct, and then sperm will leave through the urethra, okay, of the penis. There's different glands in here, the bulbourethral glands, prostate glands. These produce fluids that will nourish the sperm and allow for them to leave the site there of maturation. Okay, so like I said, spermatogenesis, sperm are produced in the testis and stored in the epididymis. The seminal vesicles, prostate gland, and the bulbourethral glands produce the fluids that are going to form semen, and the sperm are in the semen, and the semen is released out of the penis to the female reproductive tract. Okay, so what's in human semen? So we've got, depending on the source, kind of, the different components. So from the seminal vesicles, fructose is in there, and fructose is important to be broken down for energy, for ATP. Prostaglandins are going to be stimulatory in getting the smooth muscle contractions in the uterus to go. The prostate gland is an antibiotic, produces antibiotic compounds, citric acids, and antibiotics are going to prevent urinary tract infections in males, keep it clean. Citric acid is used for the Krebs cycle by the sperm in their mitochondria for energy. The bulbourethral gland produces an alkaline mucus that is going to produce the pre-ejaculatory fluid, which will neutralize acids in the urethra and also in the female reproductive tract. So the vas deferens are tubes and that transport sperm from the epididymis to the ejaculatory ducts. Semen then enters the urethra, and the urethra is the passageway for urine and semen. Urine being your more acidic, and semen being the alkaline. So a lot of times following an ejaculation, the urge to urinate is going to cleanse the urethra, right, to kind of balance that out. Semen is expelled during ejaculation. Right? So I'm going to end there with the male reproductive system, and the next part we'll deal with the female.